Hey guys, welcome to the first part of this Bitcoin Cash wallet tutorial. In this video we'll be creating our development setup, which we'll be using all throughout the rest of this tutorial. By the end of this video we will have a website up and running locally, together with a very basic build process which bundles all our JavaScript code together with a couple dependencies which we'll be needing later on. So that's it for the intro, and let's jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directory called bch wallet 1a. The 1a stands for single address, which is a type of wallet that we will be creating. Then I'm going to go ahead and run yarn init to create a package.json file. I'm going to use the defaults for many of these, and here I'm going to write the description. I'm gonna put myself here as the author, and all the rest is just fine. Now I'm gonna go ahead and open my editor, Visual Studio Code, in this new directory. And the first thing I'm gonna do is create a file called index.html. I'm gonna put an empty HTML document here with a hello world message here. So that we can see that everything is being loaded fine. In order to actually run this website locally, I'm gonna add a new script here called start, which is essentially gonna just run an HTTP server on the root directory. For that, there is this very handy package called HTTP server, which I'm going to need to install first. I'm going to install this as a dev dependency because it's not going to be used by the app itself, just as part of the development setup. Now I'm going to test this by actually running the script we just created. And let's open that in a browser and see if everything is working fine. So here we have the hello world message, so everything seems to be working fine. And I'm gonna start creating some JavaScript. So I'm gonna create a directory here quote source with an index.js file. I'm gonna go ahead and add a console log here saying hi, how you doing? And if I want to add this JavaScript into the index.html file, I could simply just add a script tag with a source going to source/index.js. However, later on we're going to be adding more code, and we want some way to making all that JavaScript come together into a single file, which is a bundle, including our wallet code together with the dependencies that we're going to be using. And for that purpose, we're going to be using Webpack. Now, you don't really need to know any advanced Webpack stuff. I'm going to use the most basic form of build process with Webpack, which is just a script called build, where I'm just going to call Webpack the command line interface with a couple arguments. The first one is going to be the mode, which I'm going to use development. That essentially just tells Webpack that you don't want it to minify any of the code, which is going to make it simpler to look into the bundle file and make sure that everything in there is what we expect it to be. I'm going to change a couple defaults here. I'm going to change the output path to the root directory on our project, and I'm also going to change the file name to bundle.js. And before actually running this, I need to install Webpack, again as a dev dependency, also the Webpack client interface. Once this finishes downloading all that stuff, I'm gonna run yarn build to make sure that the build file is actually created correctly. Before that, I just noticed I forgot to tell Webpack which one is the entry point for our application, which is the source/index.js file. So now everything's ready to run yarn build, and let's see what we get. So Webpack here created a file called bundle.js. We can see here the output. I'm gonna peek into that file, and here we can see there's a whole lot of boilerplate code which is added by Webpack. We don't really need to care about that. The important thing is that here at the bottom we can see that source/index.js file is actually being bundled. The console log hi is down here at the bottom. Now we actually want to add this code into the HTML so that it runs together with our application. So for that I'm going to add a script tag with a source pointing at bundle.js. I'm also going to add here the keyword defer, which just makes sure that the JavaScript code runs at the end of the HTML parsing, so that we make sure that all the DOM elements are in place by the time that our bundle is actually executing. So let's see if this is actually working. I'm going to run yarn start again. And let's refresh this web page, and the hello world is still there, of course, but now if I look into the console, I can see that the index.js file is outputting a hi, which is what we expected. So that means that our code is being actually bundled and imported into the HTML document. Before moving forward, I'm going to add one more script here, which is called, it's going to be called build watch, which essentially just does the same as build, but then the process itself just keeps on lingering there and watching for any changes that happen on our JavaScript files, so such that anytime that we change anything, Webpack will rebuild everything without us having to explicitly ask for it. So this is very simple. We just run yarn build, and we add an argument -w, which just means watch. So now if I run yarn build watch, you can see here that Webpack is creating the bundle again. However, the process is still lingering here. If I go ahead and change anything in the index file and save the file, when I come here we can see that Webpack actually rebuilt the whole thing, which is what we wanted. Now to move forward, we're gonna create a wallet.js file here as well, and we're gonna create a wallet function, which is going to be a constructor function. I'm gonna add another console log here saying simply constructing a wallet, and I'm gonna export this here. So that means that now I can, from the index file, I can require the module we just created, and here the magic here is all being handled by Webpack, which processes this require statement and makes sure that the wallet.js file is actually included here. So I'm gonna run, so build watch is still running, so now I'm gonna stop it. I'm gonna start the web page again. I'm gonna refresh, and here we have it, constructing a wallet. That means that the wallet.js file is successfully bundled with the index.js file. I'm also gonna add another handy script here to such that I can avoid having to kill the build watch and then going back to start. It's a lot easier if I just add a script called dev that essentially does the same two things but at the same time. In order to achieve this, I'm going to use this very handy package called concurrently, which essentially just takes care of running two processes in parallel. I'm going to install this first. Add this is again a dev dependency because our app itself is not really going to use it. And the script, I just need to tell concurrently what are the commands that I wanted to run in parallel. I'm going to add, give them names first. One is going to be the build process. The other one is going to be the start process. and the command for the build process is just going to be yarn build watch, and the command for the start process is just going to be yarn start. So now when let me just reopen this file, package JSON. I just had a conflict there with the yarn ad that was running in the background and the changes that I was doing. Now here we added the deb script again. So now this is ready for me to try it out. Now here we can see in the output we have the start process, which is just a server, and we have the build process, which is Webpack in watch mode. Now this is really handy because I can come here and just change the code. And now when I refresh the page, which is still running, I can see here the changes taking effect immediately. So now we have the wallet module, which is successfully bundled with the index.js. But before actually finishing, I want to add a couple dependencies here to make sure that Webpack can actually handle them appropriately. And the dependencies that we're going to use are two, namely Bitcore, which is an awesome JavaScript library for doing all types of Bitcoin Cash things. It was originally written for Bitcoin, and I'm pretty sure there's also either forks or versions for different coins. We're gonna be using it a lot later. So here I'm just gonna require it. The name of the package is Bitcore libcache. And the second dependency that we're gonna be using is a function called fetch, which is essentially just a modern version of Ajax, which most modern browsers already implement natively. However, support is not fully complete yet. There's a lot of older browsers that still don't have it. So we're going to use this dependency to make sure we don't lose those browsers. I'm going to add these two things here. I'm just going to log them to make sure that they're actually being bundled correctly and not empty or anything like that. So now if I refresh the page, of course I forgot to actually install these first. I'm going to do that now. These are actually dependencies that our app is going to be using, so they're not really dev dependencies like the other ones. So there's no -d here. And once this finishes installing, I'm just going to run yarn dev. And now I can refresh the page. And there we go. Constructing a wallet that was there before. But now we have the Bitcore and the fetch objects, or object and function. Both of them seem to be bundled just fine. So this essentially completes our development setup. We have the yarn dev command that makes it super easy to run the website and perform changes in the code at the same time and see the effects of these changes immediately. And we've successfully bundled the dependencies that we're going to be using later. So everything is set and ready to start actually developing our wallet. So that's all for part 1, and see you again on part 2.